it's Pam from Sew Crafts by Pam, and I have a card for you today featuring the June 2016 Simon Says Stamp card kit. I'm starting off my card with a Simon Says Stamp side folding card base, and then I'm cutting down some paper from the card kit. This is the blue paper that was included, and I'm cutting it down to 4 by 5 1/4. That way there's a nice white border around the edge of it. Here, this is one of the pattern papers included in the kit. I'm just using my grid to measure out how long I wanted the pattern paper to be. I don't have it shown in the video, but I'm trying to create a border around the pattern paper to match what I am following in the Mojo Monday sketch for this week. So I ended up cutting the pattern paper to 3 by 3 inches. Included in the card kit is a stamp set, Look for the Miracles, and I decided to use the sentiment Look for the Miracles from that stamp set for this card. I like to use my mini Misty tool whenever I stamp sentiments for my cards. That way, if I stamp the sentiment and it's not perfectly even, I can go ahead and ink up the image again and restamp it. That's actually what ended up happening here. I stamped my image and there were a few spots where it was kind of splotchy, so I decided to go ahead and ink up the stamp again and go over the sentiment. That way it filled up those missing spots and it also made the sentiment dark and bold. So one of the things I've been doing lately when stamping my images, instead of using StazOn ink, which often didn't leave a clear image, I now use VersaFine ink because it is a wet pigment ink and it gives a clearer and more crisp image. And then what I usually do after stamping my image is I clear heat emboss it. That way it is completely dry and I can go ahead and move on to the next part of my card. This also gives the images a nice finished look. When I use this to stamp critter images or images that I'm going to color in with my zig markers, the embossed lines help to contain the watercolor within the image. You can see in the video when I'm using my heat tool, I'm kind of running it back and forth over the pattern paper, and I'm also running it underneath. Because the paper was so thin, it started to warp a little bit. So by applying heat to both sides of the paper, it helped to keep it flat. So now not only is my sentiment dry, but you can see the nice finished look the embossing gives it. Now I'm using my Plus tape runner adhesive to adhere the sentiment to the solid blue cardstock. The Plus tape runner adhesive is my favorite tape adhesive to use. The reason is because the refills last twice as long as some of the other tape runners I've used, such as Tombow, which seemed like it was always needing a refill. For the next part of my card, I decided to pull out some ribbon. This was to fulfill another part of the sketch that I was using. I pulled out a couple of different colors of pinks, and the pink that I went with actually matched another part of the pattern paper that I didn't use. There were some splotches on it because it was like a mixed media look, and the splotches of pink actually matched perfectly to this color ribbon that I'm using. All these ribbons that I pulled out actually come from American Crafts multi-packs. I like these because it always gives you a variety of colors, and sometimes there's multiple patterns. It's a great way to get a bunch of different types of ribbon in your arsenal so that when you're making cards you have a bunch of different types to choose from without having too much ribbon that you're never going to use. I decided to pull the large flower image from the stamp set, and I pulled some zig markers that matched the colors that I was using in my card. For the yellow, I used number 50 yellow. For the blue, I ended up using number 31 cobalt blue, and then for the pink, I used number 25 pink. To match the mixed media look of the pattern paper, I decided that I wanted to do some watercoloring to fill in the flower image that I chose. So what I decided to do is I used some Versamark ink to stamp the image on some watercolor paper, and I used clear embossing powder to heat emboss it. By having a clear embossed image, I can use my watercoloring over the image, and it's going to do some emboss resist. So as I watercolor over top of the image, the parts that are embossed are going to resist the color, and that's where the white from the paper is going to show through. Now usually when I use my zig markers, I use them directly onto the paper to color in my images, and then I use multiple markers from the same color family to blend them together to create some shading. This time I'm going to use a different technique. I'm first going to wet the paper with some water, and then I'm going to use my markers to color in parts of the flower. And I'm just going to go from the outside. So by coloring from the outside in, I'm actually just going to blend the colors together. So I'm going from blue to pink to yellow. And by doing that, where I have the yellow and the pink, I'm going to get a little bit of orange. And then where I have the pink and the blue, I'm going to get a little bit of purple. So I'm just going to stop talking at this point and play some music so you can watch what I'm doing. So now that I'm finished with coloring my image using my watercolor markers, I'm going to heat emboss it so that I can dry it a little bit more quickly than just waiting for it to air dry. And then I'm going to use some fussy cutting to cut out the flowers since there's no dies, but since they have a basic shape, it's pretty simple to fussy cut them out. I'm going to use some foam tape to pop up my flower to give it some dimension. Now, in the Mojo Monday sketch that I'm using, there's actually a circle where I'm going to be putting this flower on my card, but because the flower is a circular shape, I decided that's what I wanted to add to my card. My card is pretty much finished at this point, but I do have some finishing touches that I want to add to complete it. So now I can use some foam tape to attach this to my card base. I could have used some tape runner adhesive to attach it to my card base, but I decided that I still wanted a little bit more dimension because the card is pretty simple, so I used foam tape instead. To finish up my cards, I typically like to add some sparkle, and this can be done by using some Wink of Stella or some pretty pink posh sequins. Because the Wink of Stella is a wet medium, when I apply it to my watercolor flower, it's going to reactivate the watercolor. So you can see that as I'm putting the Wink of Stella on each color, I'm wiping the color from the brush off on some scrap paper so that I don't blend color where I don't want it. As for the sequins, I'm using some sparkling clear pretty pink posh sequins, and I'm using both the 4mm and the 6mm sizes to add some variety. You can't see it in the video, but I'm using some micro glue dots to attach the sequins to my card. I found that these work really well and never have a problem with the sequins falling off. Here you can see the sparkle I added using the Wink of Stella, as well as the blending of my watercolors. So that pretty much finishes up my card. A list of the supplies I use will be in the description box below. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.